whole like sonnet tradition. The entire sonnet tradition is based upon that type of woman, because like Petrarch's models, the women that Petrarch loved.
30% of the show is about finding out how the meth lab that Gus Fring builds and reveals in season 4 of Breaking Bad got made. Holy shit. Wow. So I'm just saying, yeah, there's good stuff throughout, but especially as the Lalo shit just ate the rest of the show in the last season, so that you don't see Saul become Saul Goodman until the very end of the fucking last color episode. That's like, I'm sorry. The thing cool about him was that he was the character he was. How does he become him? That's the Breaking Bad arc. And also, it doesn't make sense for a guy who was a crook from day one. Righteous Gemstones. Somebody says, watching Righteous Gemstones. Of course. Now, there's a program. Mwah. I just feel like people made at every step since like Sopranos defined what a good show was. Meaning a show. This is what I mean by good show. I'm not talking about anything to do with quality. I'm talking about a show that can fill a cultural space. And that is this show that self-perceived smart people feel comfortable debating and describing the aesthetic merits of in public, specifically on social media. That is a good show. That's for my purpose. This is the show. This is the model of thing that The Sopranos gifted to us at the dawn of the 21st century. And that was a blessing, because we were going to need it, because the internet was going to destroy our literacy. It was going to destroy our attention span. It was going to destroy our interest in leaving our homes. And what that meant is that the broad middle brow of narrative art was going to collapse around stuff that you watch at home. And then we were going to have our engagement with it happen in public in our social media, which is filling the role of actually being and interacting with other human beings. No, The Sopranos was not that down. I mean, it was incredibly well reviewed. There was an SNL sketch at the time that made fun of the reviews of The Sopranos in the first season, just hyperventilating, like the Messiah had arrived. But like, it did not become a phenomenon for a little bit, and that's because people came to the lifestyle of, at that time, reading at work, at their shitty, boring jobs, sitting down and reading online recaps. That's where this whole thing starts. And then going in the comments about them. But of course, not everyone was doing that. Very few people were literally writing the comments, but lots of people were engaged peripherally in the discussion, and that replaced difficult films, or honestly anything outside of blockbuster films. It replaced novels completely. It took away both of those things from like the cultural conversation and gave us a new thing, easier to consume than those other things, like literally easier to consume. In that, easier than a book in that you don't have to read, you can just stare at the screen. Easier than a movie in that you don't have to leave your house to see it. Easier. And that slot got filled by a show, and that show changed over time. And the thing is, the show got worse over time. Now, I would argue that there's like a moment after The Sopranos when the form kind of bursts up a little bit, because like, oh, there's this new form. Everybody like rises to the challenge of it, and you have this crop of shows that are at least as good as The Sopranos, and some could argue better, like Mad Men, like Deadwood. You can argue about The Wire all you want, but its ability to fill the role of the show smart people talk about was impressive. But then it starts to fucking fall. It starts to get less rigorous as time goes on, as the format itself, which is a mass extended viewership over years, dominates over everything else. Because I would argue that element of television makes it a lesser artistic medium than either film or novels. Easier, lesser. And keeping people watching makes the genre stuff that's like supposed to be the sweet to the salty of the more modernist character-based stuff overwhelms the palate. And Breaking Bad is really where that kicks in. Breaking Bad is much more genre-y than any of the previous good shows. And as a result, people had to work harder to make it mean something. And after that fell off, like the economy of television changed, all in ways to make shows worse in general, to make it so that the show that like rises up is going to be worse. Then we had Game of Thrones fill that spot, which is, of course, like even more, traditionally genre-based than Breaking Bad is. More of a fantasy thing than Breaking Bad even is, a crime show. And, like, you can argue, well, these are all good shows. I like them. I love them, in fact, at times. Gambo got me to read those stupid books, which I never had before watching Gambo. And I was at the edge of my seat as I watched fucking Breaking Bad. They were effective. But as a thing that everybody should sit around and talk about, discuss from a critical literary perspective, absolutely not. Move on. But there was nothing to move on to. There was nothing else that everybody had experienced to talk about. And so that's what they talk about. By the time Better Call Saul shows up, it's the only thing with any connection to that era still around. And over time,